Hello and welcome to Sin and Steel, the heavy metal podcast. I'm your host, Serotonin, and today we're joined by Chris and Tom of Western Australian black metal band Deadspace. Thank you guys for taking some time to chat.
Welcome. Yeah, you're welcome.
Getting right into it, Deadspace have recently released the album The Dark Enlightenment, and I know this is something you have spoken about in the past, but I did want to start by looking at that change and the growth of the band, because you guys kind of started out in that depressive black metal space, known for having that bit of a gothic edge, but you guys have been going through a period of change over the previous years and past few releases. You've maintained like that distinct sound, but brought a lot more ferocity and aggression. And it feels like with the latest release, you really hit that definitive point of where you now sit within extreme metal. How would you describe the changes that the band has undertaken? What has influenced this, and where are you at now?
Cool.
I'll leave that one. Yeah, I'll
start with that one. So, I mean, like, we broke up for a while. And that's a pretty big turning point for any band, is to actually, like, we got to a point where we were just really unhappy.
Yeah.
Particularly like me. I have to say a lot of it had to do with me, but a lot of it was like, you know, there were all these difficulties like managing the band, you know, managing getting together, doing this and that. And really, like, what I realized deep down is, like, for me personally, I was just unhappy with what we were doing, and it wasn't worth it anymore, like going through all that stuff just to play music that I wish we weren't playing anymore.
Yeah.
So I think taking a break had a big influence in that, but also that break's pretty significant because Tom and I are basically the core members. I mean, like, everything that happens in Deadspace is somehow attributed to the fact that we got that energy in motion. And fuck that.
Fucking what?
It's okay. Is it not on brand to sit in darkness?
Yeah. Well, the problem is it keeps turning back on. But yeah, the other thing is, like, it's pretty significant because we had a lot of reflection and growing up to do around that point. And life kind of really took over, especially for Tom, who went and did an apprenticeship. And then later on, I ended up moving with my wife Annette to Belgium.
Yeah.
So we were in Belgium for 2 years, and it was, you know, pretty different over there. You know, a lot to get used to. Pretty much trying to learn a new language to fit in, like, every couple of weeks, and it was, you know, just different. And we just got to a point where we weren't really happy doing what we were doing, and it's really the music just wasn't enough. And we listened to like a whole bunch of other stuff, and always felt like we had the potential to kind of explore a little bit more, like kind of push that canvas a little bit. Not necessarily go heavier in a sense, but to at least explore like the fringes of what we were doing. Ended up pushing it a little bit heavier kind of naturally. But that could be the time thing as well.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Like, it sounds like you guys are gone through quite a lot. A lot has led to that. One thing I did note as well was that you guys moved from being signed with a label back to releasing independently as well. How does that impact the direction of the band or how you guys approach things?
Again,
I'll start this, and then I'll give Tom some sort of input in this, because we both have our own kind of ideas. For us, it's kind of like the label decision. It's hard to explain. It's like the label is there if it's working for the band.
Yeah.
And we don't really let anything kind of get in the way of what we want to do at all anymore. And that's another thing that we kind of discussed when we decided to reunite. And, you know, like, the thing is like, there's a lot of good people running labels. There's a lot of bad people running labels, but there's a lot of bad people in bands, and there's a lot of good people in bands. My problem with labels is the business model just doesn't work. And that it's got nothing on the people or the intentions. It's not like, oh, we work with this person, they tried to rip us off or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, we don't live in the same kind of like industrialized music space like we used to.
Yeah.
And someone's got to get screwed, and not even deliberately, but just by the nature of the game, someone will get screwed. And for a record label who is operating in a way as a business, the record label will have to, for the longevity of the label, resist being screwed for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Which basically means at the end of the day, the band ends up with absolutely nothing. And the digital era, I think, has a lot to do with that now, because, you know, if you give away your digital streaming rights to a label, which is often the deal that you make with labels because they're printing things at their own cost, makes sense, right? But you give away those digital rights and say that you want to do something in 5 years' time, you do a bigger tour or a bigger album at some point, and then the band totally picks up. Well, I mean, all of that revenue is just like lost, you know, it's gone. And you're not really in charge of like pushing it anymore, or you're left with like sort of what we found from the last deal. We're sort of left with the expectation and the task of like promoting it because it's our music, but then the more we promote it, the more money we lose. And we'd already started writing this album at that point. So it was kind of like, as much as that EP is great, it was always sort of meant to be a stepping stone to this album, and this album now has like utmost relevance. So it's good to kind of be back in control of it.
Yeah.
You want to talk about bitter loss and stuff like that a bit in terms of labels folding? And
I guess like the deal that we had with bitter loss, it just wasn't for us. Pretty much everything Chris said just nailed on the head. The business model doesn't work for us, particularly when it comes down to the financial side of things. Like playing in, you know, in a metal band and doing extreme music, there are significantly more outgoing costs than incoming. And going back to what Chris said earlier about the band breaking up in the first place, like on my part, it was mainly due to, you know, the financial side of things. So being in Western Australia, whenever we tour and, you know, we go traveling, that's all coming out of our pockets. So to lose any kind of income to a label just seems like 2 steps backwards.
It's like backpedaling.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And did it make much difference in terms of like creativity?
Being on a label? No.
Other than it being a bit emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was, we've never ever been involved with a label that's told us what to do or tried to overstep those boundaries. The labels that we've actually had have been pretty good all round. It's just we haven't agreed on certain things, and for us it's kind of like it's a non-negotiable. Like it's like we've split peacefully with the labels that we have worked with. They were just one album deals, so there were no court cases or anything like that, and we're still good friends with you know, all of the guys that we've worked with. But it's just, if there's any situation there that needs to be negotiated, for us it's like we're really just doing this for the music and for the love anyway. So if it becomes like a hassle and people start messaging me at like 4 o'clock in the morning when I've got work at 6 o'clock asking me to share reviews, I start to get a little bit pissed off. And it's become a bit like that. I mean, we've done hardly any promo for this release so far, and it's just because we've been busy, but like it doesn't matter. Like the album exists, like we can promote it whenever we want. We're not a pop band. Like, you know, the music's not going to blow up in the first month and then disappear. If anything, people will slowly get into it over the next, you know, 10 years. And we've seen that with earlier releases. Like this whole push to stay relevant all the time is just bullshit, like really, and it's draining. And that's why we split the first time. And now we're more than happy to just say, you know what, we just need to step away for a little bit, but we'll be back. It'll be fine. And we'll just do that quietly now and kind of work within our means as opposed to like exhausting ourselves.
That's great. So you've got a bit more control now, a bit more freedom. And is that kind of love for it and the passion coming back now that you've got that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'd say so, but it's still very periodical. Like it's like we have a few months where we're really fucking killing it, and then we just have a few months where we can't even look at it. But we allow ourselves to do that now because we have the maturity to kind of walk away and go, this is not going to fucking catch on fire.
Good. That's really good. Now, with the change in your sound and everything else, how would you describe the music now, and do you feel that there's a particular label or genre that kind of fits what you're doing with this latest release?
I'm not sure. Hey,
I feel like the Metal Archives needs to be updated in the very least.
I feel like the people
yeah.
at Metal Archives need to be taken out the back and shot in the head, to be honest. But,
I'm still salty at them that they've rejected Pizza Death twice and said they're not metal.
we sent like a moderator, like a proper message, like saying, "Look, we're not playing DSPM anymore," and he just replied back like, "Prove it." And I was like,
well, here's the album, so listen to it.
so I just went, "Okay, whatever. I don't care anymore."
Shit.
Look, we'll answer your question directly. I guess a lot of these sort of more like intrinsic answers may come from me, but if you want to add anything, just add, especially when it comes to style and guitar stuff. And
yeah,
so basically, like, yeah, okay, it's obviously a lot more dissonant, and it's definitely a lot like there's a lot more death metal sort of influence in there. It's kind of like an accident because I don't really listen to a lot of death metal, but listen to a lot of bands like Deathspell Amiga and sort of like weird avant-garde French kind of bands, and basically like that's where the death metal inspiration comes from, in a way. So it's still kind of black metal, kind of death metal, kind of, but more like in the way that like the avant-garde nature of it kind of is the blanket that connects all these things. I mean, honestly, there's parts on the record, like especially in Discoisia, that track's got like parts that are really like throwbacks to almost like what we were doing during the Liquid Sky, but like without the polish, and a lot of maturity has gone into that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Add to that in terms of like guitar playing and stuff, and focusing on the stuff that we're good at, and
it's definitely become a lot more like technical, and like from a guitarist perspective, it's definitely some of the hardest material I've ever had to play. And it's taken me a long time to learn some of it. I still can't play most of it perfectly. But yeah, like it's definitely a step towards us as musicians, kind of like not just guitar wise, but also drumming and bass, developing as musicians as well, and becoming more skilled artists.
I think it's the first record that I started throwing ideas to him, like sending him guitar tracks and him just going, "Fuck."
Yeah.
Like, do I have to actually play that?
When did you actually get good?
Yeah, but without the purpose of it being technical for the sake of being technical. I think.
Yeah.
Like it's like it has a feeling to it. It's not over the top, I don't think. I don't know, like you tell me. You've heard it.
It's not technical.
It's very well balanced.
Yeah. It's not technical for the point of being like flashy.
Yeah.
It's just good riffs.
It's really well balanced, and you've still got the atmospheric type stuff. You've got the kind of more, I guess, heavy, that like unrelenting, feel to certain parts. And like I was saying, it's still kind of, it's got your sound to it, but it's evolved, it's changed, it's different, but still you guys, like, still captures that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, a lot of people might think it's a big departure, but the thing is like we've been making this shift since the Dirge record, really. Like it's not new.
You've kind of been like doing that incrementally, haven't you? Was that intentional?
Not really. I think that the Dirge snap, what happened after Dirge was me taking the reins back after we had an experience where we wrote a really experimental record with a bunch of ex-members. There was a lot of fun to make, and everybody came together on it.
Yeah.
And I realized that it felt really unfocused. And at that point when we wrote Dirge, like I just locked myself back in the studio and recorded most of that stuff, and then just kind of had Tom come in and work on parts, and it basically just became me and Tom from that point onwards.
Pretty much from Dirge onwards.
Yeah.
So we just kind of took control, and we went, look, if we want the music to sound cohesive, we need to be focused. And like I've already said it in another interview anyway, so I don't mind saying it again. You know, we used to really try and hide how central I was and how central Tom and I are to this stuff, and really be like, all music by Deadspace, blah blah blah, and really make it community. But at the end of the day, you know, Deadspace is at the moment more of a studio project than a live project.
Yeah,
we still love to play live, and we still do tour and do perform, but we're at a point where the records that we put out and the music we make is far more important than being full-time performers and putting albums out so we can perform music. And that being said, I mean, most of the ideas are coming from me. Like 95% of the instruments you hear on every album is played by me. Tom will come, he adds layers, ideas, he embellishes riffs. He tells me when things are shit. That's really important. And all the other guys do that too. So everybody has a say because they know what the band's about. Like Aiden didn't like the first album name I pitched to him, and he had a really good point because I was pretty dead set on calling it whatever the fuck it was. He's like, dude, that sounds horrible, like don't. And he had a really good argument for it. So like in a way he has like, you know, different sort of parts, and you know, I sort of send him a few things, and when I was sending him the mix and he's like, oh, I don't like this reverb over here, can you kill this or can you do this? And you know, so these things are really important. Des really created this bass tone that we used on the album, but Des didn't play bass on the album. I played bass on the album because I tracked most of the guitar parts, so it makes sense to use the same hand to play all the rhythm because it's going to be more locked into what's going on. But we used all Des' bass rig, and he created that tone. Like that's like hallmark Des. So. And Herb played half the drums on it. I played half the drums on it. But it's because in some of the tracks, he just really liked what I was doing. And he's like, cool, leave it like that. And there were some tracks where he actually had all these ideas. And he's not a dick. So if he doesn't think he can improve stuff, he's not going to play it just to get an ego kick out of it. Like it's like when he's got ideas, it's like, I can make this better. I can make this better. And I trust him to always just put him on the kit and go because he's never shown me anything that we've not used on a record. Like in the whole, 7 years we've been working together with her.
Fuck, at least that,
At least that, maybe 8 years now. Yeah, 8 years. Never ever showed me anything bad or never made anything worse. To the point where like we've had albums before where I've just left him in the studio and not even been there. So yeah, everyone has a spot. But you know, at the end of the day, the band moves when I'm ready to move, when I've got ideas, and then Tom and I, we sit down together, we brainstorm stuff, we talk about what we want to do, and we're a lot more careful about that now. We talk about what we want to do before we do it, which we didn't do so much before. You know, it's like, hey, we want to do this. And it's more about what we don't want to do. Like, what don't we want to do on this album? What is a big mistake that we'd like to avoid? Are you listening to anything new? You know, that kind of stuff, and sort of touch roots in that situation. But you know, the centrality of the band is basically if everybody left except Tom, it would suck, but Tom and I would still be able to continue it as a project. If Tom left, I wouldn't bother anymore, you know, because for me, it's like, it's also an excuse for us to remain mates when we're so busy. You know, we get together and we've done this band for so long. It's like, you know, it always kind of finds its way back, even when we don't have time. So, yeah.
That's awesome. It's a really interesting writing process and all of that. It seems a bit different to the way a lot of bands would approach it. So I did, you mentioned the mixing. I did see that you did all the engineering and mixing in your home studio. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you go with that? What was that process like?
It's a pretty polished one by now.
Yeah.
But you've done lots of...
Yeah, I've done a bunch of records now. But I've got a room at home that's soundproof. Like, it's not at so we're living out like semi-rural at the moment. But like back at my parents' place, we built this studio when I was a teenager. Basically, like, it's a fully functioning like drum room. So we track drums in there when we're ready to go. So basically how it works is like everything's demoed. Basically, I get the guitar tones in place first, get everything kind of sounding how I want it, but then I program the drums.
Yeah.
And then I also refuse to re-record anything. It's like I'm stubborn and I'm impatient and I hate doing things twice. So when I actually write the music, I track it at the same time. I won't come back and touch it again. It just pisses me off.
Okay.
So that is with the exception if we change the riff or if someone can get a better take out of it and actually improve on what Chris had done, which honestly is very, very rare.
It happens.
It does happen.
My basic rule is like, if we're doing this again, you're doing it because I've already played this and I've moved on. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I mixed it after that. Yeah. So Herb and I did the drums together. As I said, we did about half each, and then I spent about a week editing the drums.
Yeah.
And then I spent about 2 weeks mixing it. We worked with a mastering engineer called Simon Struthers, who's done like a bunch of our stuff before. He's really good. But what Simon actually has is a service where you can submit mixes to him and he gives you feedback.
Yep.
So basically, I got it to a point where I was about to send it to him to get feedback, and I just went, fuck it, I'm pretty happy with the mix, so I just boycotted that. But through years of using that service, I've learned a lot,
Yeah.
Like, because it's pretty similar. Like, you record vocals through the same microphone, and it's the similar kind of style, and he's done a couple of those records before, so he's told me, this frequency in your voice needs to change and this needs to change. So I already kind of know like how to model it. Sort of relearned how to listen to what we do through a professional ear, even if I'm not a professional mixer. So yeah, it was about a 2 or 3 week process of just bouncing things down, taking it into multiple cars, on monitors, headphones, and most of the vocals were in place by the time we did drums.
Yep. Nice.
There's no samples on it or anything, so there's no synths, nothing. It's just all like instruments. So
awesome. Now, if we were to dive into the themes of the album, we see almost an amalgamation of like we've got horror and philosophy, which is directly referenced in the album's title of The Dark Enlightenment. I will not pretend to understand or know all about those themes. I've read some basics about them and that's about it. But I'd love for you to elaborate on them. So like, how would you describe the overall themes of the album and what interested you in exploring them?
It's definitely a question.
Yeah, I guess you don't have an answer for this one at all.
Nothing.
So The Dark Enlightenment is actually a book by a philosopher called Nick Land. It's a direct reference. So Nick Land's a bit of a crackhead, like literally. He's like been on the run, lives out in China somewhere at the moment, but he writes philosophy in a way that it's kind of artistic in a sense. So it's more like how Nietzsche used to write philosophy and why a lot of philosophers don't like Nietzsche, which I find strange. But there's sort of like an artistry to reading his stuff, and it paints a picture and it's vivid. It's not just a bunch of arguments. And it's ludicrous. Like this dude's stuff, it's all about how like human beings are basically like subliminally strapped to a rocket and heading towards the sun, and the quicker it blows up, like the better. And that's, basically, so he's been labeled as an accelerationist, which is kind of like, it's kind of a nasty thing to be associated with in a way, because it was adopted by a lot of like bad right-wing movements and stuff. But the way that I've sort of approached this is like, it's a story where I'm exploring a concept, and this is kind of what I'm trying to do with Deadspace now, is I'm exploring an idea for all of its good and its bad and its flaws, and not really like glorifying it, because I think this guy's a bit of an asshole, to be honest. But at the same time, like some of the things he says are so strikingly already happening that you can't ignore them. So, he kind of talks about how mankind is kind of made to serve this AI creation, which is like capitalism, and we don't actually have any choice. Like we are pre-programmed from birth, like to serve this thing, and it's not like we even elect it or choose it. It's bigger than us, and we just exist like for the sake of that. And in a way, it's like, okay, like it's a little bit sci-fi in extreme, which is the artistry in it. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, there's some pretty obvious like parallels to how we really live, like in his way of writing. So I tried to explore it like that. And what I like about it a lot is a lot of his stuff crosses over into like Lovecraftian territory. And I'm a big Lovecraft fan. I've read a lot of Lovecraft, and I like how he weaves that into his philosophy. Like, if there is this capitalist AI thing, blah blah blah, then there must be outer gods. There must be this hidden psyche of like human darkness.
Yeah.
That the fear of the unknown, the fear of the cosmic sort of void. And I just found it really interesting. I love reading Nick Land. Sometimes I will be sitting there and I'll be able to read a whole paragraph and not take like a word of it in. And sometimes there'll be one line where I'll be sitting on the couch just like, holy shit, and laughing for like half an hour that he even wrote that. So, for me, it's just pure art versus science versus philosophy versus humanity.
Yeah.
In this like one big pot, and I just found it very interesting. And for me, it's more like when I put music out in this kind of realm, I'm thinking like, what's interesting? What is worth writing an essay about? Yeah, that's my 2 cents on it. Tom really had nothing to. No one had anything to do.
Nothing to do with any of the lyrical or themes.
Yeah,
This is all stuff that I referenced while doing philosophy units in my arts degree, and got very, very nasty looks and marks from the lecturers, and was told not to bring this stuff up at such an institution. So I thought it was worth putting elsewhere where it was permitted.
How dare you explore the things that you find interesting?
Well, at the same time, philosophically, it's extremely flawed. So, when you're trying to win a philosophical argument, you bring up someone like Land. It's like, who?
Yeah, okay. In that context, yeah, fair.
Like bringing Marilyn Manson home to meet your mum or something.
Oh, shit. I guess you kind of already, like, maybe answered this a little bit for me, because I was a bit curious on how you bring those concepts together with the music itself to evoke the kind of feeling that you want, but it, I guess, is part of that you're the main person writing that allows you to be able to do that. I don't know if I explain myself very well. I don't know if I worded that very well.
Right? No, I get what you mean. It's complicated, but I'm really, to be really honest with you, I write a lot without music. I don't write hooks. I'm very anti-hooks when it comes to Deadspace. I write without music, and I write in a diary or on my computer. I just write for the sake of writing. And then basically what I do is when demos are done, I sit there and I put the mic on and I just record everything in one take, and I never listen to it again. So I do my stuff like on the fly. And then, it depends. If it's going to be like an album, like this album, I'll go through, I'll touch things up, I'll add layers here if needed. But I basically I like that energy in the moment. And for me, it's just, I will sit there and just do a take, and then I'll go for a walk and or go, drive to work or something and listen to it depending on my mood. If I'm not in the mood to work, I won't listen to music because I'll hate things that actually sound good. Basically try and get out and listen to it a bit. And once I've listened to things enough, if there's a line or two somewhere that I think needs to be replaced, then I replace it. But I'm also pretty tough on that process. It's like, if it doesn't really need to be replaced and it's a bit rough, then I generally keep it. So it's,
It works for what you're doing. And obviously, the results speak for themselves, right?
Well, it's almost conversational in a way. Like the way that I sing, it's like no one's expecting the vocal patterns to come out like that over the riff that it does. Which for me, it adds to our non-crowd pleasing attitude, which I think, it's very hallmark, whether you like it or not, it's very hallmark us. I've spoken to people before that they feel like we could spend more time writing better hooks because our songs would, what do kids say these days? Slap harder. Our songs would slap harder.
You'd better write a banger.
What if I don't want my fucking songs to slap harder? So anyway, for me, it's more conversational. It's fun. It's dialogue, and I never sing anything I know the lyrics, I know the patterns, but I will deviate live as I see fit. I'm not trying to lock it into this gridded pattern all the time. There are certain parts that are always the same. There's some parts where I will actually have something in my head the day before, and I'll sing that instead. In certain situations, and no one really knows anyway. But
Are there any particular tracks that you did want to talk about further or dive into a little bit deeper?
No, I want to hear what you think. I don't even know if he likes the album yet. So.
Oh, you give us we'll do a review. Deadspace reviews Deadspace.
That's one that I play live.
Yeah, so you can talk about it.
Well, you know all the lyrical things. I don't know shit. Probably culminating chaos. It's one of the ones off the new record that we're playing live.
Yep.
We're working on bringing a few more into the set, but that's the main one that we're playing at the moment. In terms of what we play live, it is like going back to guitar stuff. It is the hardest one that I've had to learn for Deadspace. There are harder songs that we've got, but that is probably the hardest one I've been able to pull off live.
Yeah.
And I think I speak for the other guys. Yeah, it's a nice challenge.
But it came together really quick, and it feels good. Like, it's a good live song. It's a good album song.
And it's great. It's fun to play live as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think my favorite tracks off the album are Discoisia and the Catacosmic Conundrum, because it's so weird, and I like how it doesn't resolve. It's just like, if that was the only song you heard on the record, that last part would be like, I thought it was going to go somewhere. Like, most people would be really pissed off, but for me, it just kind of disintegrates. And I've been wanting to do an ending like that for a long time, and we've tried it on other records, and we've sort of succeeded, but not in that way. Like, for me, it was like without introducing effects or anything, and actually just playing it out. Like, that's like pure. Like, there's no resolve at all, and I think that that's kind of cool. The riffs in that song are definitely my favorite too.
Yeah.
Funny enough, there was another song that was meant to go in that song's place, and Aiden really liked it. He was like, it's really cool, and I was listening to it, and the more I was listening to it, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't like it much. And then I asked Des, and Des was like, I wouldn't be sad if we cut it. Like, it's a good song, but if we wanted to cut it, we could cut it. And I just went, fuck it, I'll write another one. So actually, there was no track down when we did the drums for the Catacosmic Conundrum.
Okay.
That was done by me and Herb just recording a song with no guitars. So we just played, everything in that is like drum driven. It was like, we want this weird blast beat that's like jangly, and it's cut here and it's cut there. And then like there's a part in that where he's playing like all the cymbals, and like that's like, it's all written around the drums. I was like, dude, I want to do something that's like just really like different from everything else. Like, and it was like me and him. So like there's like sections that I'm playing, sections that he's playing. We've like stitched them. We've made this like monster of a drum track. Yeah. And then I sat with the guitar afterwards and just sort of like jammed over it and started like coming up with these like rhythms. Nice. But that was like at the very end of the process. Like, that song didn't exist. Yeah. So that for that reason alone, I guess that song is probably the coolest. But Discoisia, I think, it's like the quintessential Deadspace track. Like, it's the track that you can feel things from like 2015 where we first started that have like developed into something going through like every single era of the band.
How old were you guys when you started Deadspace as well?
Well, Chris started Deadspace in 2014, I think, and I jumped on board in 2017.
What year is it now? 2024. How old am I?
32.
Have to ask him that. I think I'm 32. So 32, 10 years ago, I was 22.
Yep.
I think I was, and then I jumped on 27. I think I would have been 20 when I joined.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious because I wasn't sure.
Tom's a few years younger than me.
Yeah.
Actually, like, how I know Tom,
it's a funny story.
He was always this like, this kid at school that like when he turned 18, like he started coming out and like watching us play like in older bands and stuff. And like I knew him like from the years younger than me, like at the same school that we were at. And like a few times I went in after, I was going to say graduating, after being expelled, came back in to see like a couple of teachers, and he was in the class, and he'd always be like, oh, hey man, blah, blah, blah. Yep. And then one night he came out to a gig. He was 18. We got talking outside. It was cool, whatever. Then I saw him at a second gig. He came to a second gig, and I was like, well, what are you doing after this? You want to come back, hang out? We're having some drinks at ours. And he came back, and we just completely destroyed his life for a good week and a half after that. And then
the last 7 years?
Decade and a half.
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going with that.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice, but basically, then it was like, we needed a guitar player. Tom was considerably younger, so I was a little bit like, not looking specifically at Tom, but it was kind of like he could play, he was committed, and he was hanging around with us pretty much every time we were doing anything social anyway. And it was sort of like a situation of like, here you go, here's a pair of boots, step into them, and
nice.
Over the years, him and I have become like musically inseparable. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just it's a strange thing, but I guess it's because we just trusted it and let it grow.
Yep.
And people have come and gone, and we've made a lot of friends in this band. We've had a lot of members. But Herb's been around for quite a while. But the other two, like they're new guys, like they're fairly new. It's funny because Des has like technically been in the band now like a year and a half or 2 years, but like we've only played like 4 shows or maybe 5 shows with them. So it's like, interesting stuff. Tom and I have been everywhere.
That's awesome. On the live shows, so you were saying you're not doing a shit ton of touring or anything like that, but you have been doing some shows. So what has kind of been happening for you, and what shows have you got coming up? I know there is one in Melbourne, January, which I'll be looking forward to.
Connecting to that Melbourne show, there will be 2 New South Wales shows.
Awesome. Okay.
So I'm not going to release too much information or anything at this point because we're still working with the promoter about the announcement, hopefully next week.
Yeah.
But we will finally be getting back to New South Wales.
Nice.
And we've been to Adelaide twice this year. Was it both this year? Yeah, twice this year.
Did we go to Melbourne this year?
Yeah, we were in Melbourne November last year. So we have nothing else booked, nothing in Perth at this point. But it's not really been a priority at this point. The priority is really like getting this little like weekend kind of tucked in. And like we could go and book a Perth show, but it really depends what's happening. Like we're not really the kind of band these days that'll be like, oh, well, we've got an album, we should do an album launch. We're more the kind of band that's like, we've got an album, whether we launch it or not, it's a fucking album. Yeah. People will listen to it if they want to listen to music, fine. And if something good comes up, there's good bands playing, there's a good venue, promoter that A, we trust, B, we actually, we want to be involved with, those kind of things. Like, like we jump on those things. But I don't see the point in just booking stuff and stressing, being like, oh, well, we need to coincide it with this tour, so we need the venue on this date. And then, oh, no, we've got no support bands, and what do we do? Because that shit is so boring.
I think that you guys have shown, though, with your little hiatuses where you guys have split with some people, come back, whatever, all those little things have probably shown that it's okay for your stuff to sit and percolate and whatever. People are still going to come back and see you when they get the opportunities. People are going to listen to your music, and they're going to love those, even those little ones that come across every so often. They're going to love those and come to them and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like performance is also an art, and I don't think that being a performer and being an artist is the same thing.
Yep.
I think that being an artist that makes music is literally in its own kind of realm, and you can do that without necessarily becoming a performer or being a performer. Now, there's no reason you can't love doing both art forms and you can't mix that up a little bit, but for me, the balance needs to be like 80% creating music and 20% celebrating that live. And if you're stressing about everything surrounding that, it's no longer fun anymore. It's not really, if the right tour came up and it was a great tour and it was 30 days on the road somewhere and it was going to work out with our lives, and of course, we do it, but to actually spend every day sitting around sending emails trying to make these opportunities come up, time consuming and boring. I'd rather just write another record.
Yeah.
All the time that I used to spend doing admin stuff, like I'd rather just write music, honestly, or actually just take a break from the music and go do something else for a little bit that's gonna bring in some perspective, because I think a lot of musicians are just like chasing their tail with this idea that the music industry actually still exists, and there's no music industry anymore. Like, it's not an industry. It's
just
very different to what it once was.
Yeah, and I mean, at my, I don't know if it's because of my age or maybe because I'm jaded and maybe have issues or whatever, but like, not only do I not really care what people think about my music, but I also really I loathe the attention and the validation. Like, if people do talk about me instead of the music, then I find it quite hard to deal with, and I'm still not very good at compliments. And it's not because I think I'm not good at what I do, or it's because I don't care. Like, for me, it's like I put everything out there still in front of our fans when we play live, because it's for me. Like, if I get up there and I don't do that, then I don't get anything out of it. So everything it's changed for us quite a bit. The whole industry and the whole scene and everything has kind of we're really like black metal outlaws in a way. Like, just we have our own opinions, our own views, and we don't play the game. And that's going to hold us back. Like, if we were looking at this from a business perspective, like, it would be like, well, what's the fucking point? But
that doesn't make sense to look at it from a business perspective.
But you're talking about the art, and that's the thing. The people who are going to be drawn to the art that you're creating are the ones that appreciate that you're just doing what you want to do because that's what you create, not because that's what you think other people want. So, like, that's art in its purest form, right? But I find that really interesting. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about like that distinction between the creation of the music as the art form versus the performance, because it is often expected that is a package deal for musicians, unless someone is outright like, no, it's a studio project and nothing more. But it's two very different things. And listening to you talking about the way that you create and the way that you write and the way you record and all of that makes so much fucking sense. Like, it all just makes so much sense, and it's really interesting. Yeah, really interesting.
I have to actually give credit where credit's due. Like, all of the reason that we can be like this is because we do have the fan base that we have.
Yeah.
If we didn't already have the people that do support us, it may, in terms of like a global scale, it may be, a limited number, but if we didn't have really amazing fans that did really care when we drop stuff, the way that we did things might not work.
Yeah.
And that's something that needs to be acknowledged. Being like a brand new band that doesn't have an album out and adopting an attitude like what we've got, I mean, you're gonna maybe grow 2 followers a year or something, and that's about it. Yeah. But we're at a point where we just don't feel like we need to accelerate what we're doing, because all the people that we want they're right there. So we have people that like what we do, and they like it for reasons that we might not share, but we respect. And I've never met one of our fans that I thought was a horrible person. Some very strange people, but not horrible people. And that's cool, so without that, this wouldn't really work. And it's like when people fucking talk about how life's not that bad, blah blah blah, but then you realize that they're fucking filthy rich, and it's just like, well, you're not really qualified to make those statements because you don't live in the real world. So you gotta give that sort of that perspective on it. That's like, we have been a band for almost 10 years. We are where we are because we worked hard. I mean, with the money that I put into developing this band alone, I could have bought 2 houses.
Likewise.
Maybe almost the same for you, at least a house. Like we sacrificed a lot to sort of be where we are, and all we've got left is really like the love for the craft, and that's about it. So
it's all definitely come at a great deal of personal sacrifice. I guess. Prioritizing the band over fucking bucks. Prioritizing the band over other things in life,
like stability, friends.
And I think that's going back to the breakup in, I think it was 2020. Like, COVID was a thing, obviously, but that was a point for me where I had to decide, like, shit, I drive a forklift for a living. I kind of need to actually
get a career
and move on with my life. I still want to do music and pursue this, but at the same time, I need to keep a roof over my head. And obviously with the economy how it is, it's just gone harder and harder. So
massively. But look, kudos to you guys, because you can tell that you guys put a lot in, and what you put out is fantastic. Is there anything else on the horizon, anything you're working on, planning for, or any more goals for Deadspace at this point?
Not immediately.
Nothing active. But
I don't know, like, I feel like we need to explore things a little bit more. I don't know, we might go down and eventually craft a music video or something for one of these songs, but we also, like, we're talking about the guy that we use for PR, Chris Marich, and I was like, do we really need a music video on release? And he's like, these days, not really. I mean, it helps, but I just didn't want to rush it. Like, if we do something like that, I don't want it to be a promo tool. I want it to actually be like a piece of art. So, we might explore the visual side of things a little bit more in relation to this album, but we're not sure. At the moment, like, we're just trying to catch up with promo a little bit because we've been really slack. There will definitely be more music. We don't know whether it will be in the form of, EPs, albums, or whatever, but when ideas come up, they will come up. The reason that we happen to be together tonight is we're actually working on different music that's not Deadspace, that will at some point come out.
Is it something that you want to plug or talk about a little bit, or is it not yet?
Not really, because I don't want to jinx it. We're working on a few other projects, actually, like 3 other projects at the moment that are different. Like, Tom's helping me with my solo stuff a little bit, which is like bluesy kind of like country weird kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Down like Americana kind of.
I'd be keen to hear that for sure.
I'll send you some stuff when it's ready.
Please. I've actually and I've horrified people when I've told them this, that I actually love a lot of country music, but especially dark country, and I love American Gothic. I love all that sort of stuff. So
Henry Derek Ellis?
No, I might have to check them out.
But anyway, let's not let country hijack the interview. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and Tom and I have other experimental things going on, and we're putting some stuff together with people that you might not expect that we'd be working with, some that you would. So there's a lot going on, and there will be more Deadspace music. There will be more shows. There will at some point probably be a tour somewhere, or at the moment we just don't have the means to do it. We've been wanting to get to the States for a very long time. Can't find anyone that's willing to front the visa cost and bring us over. Which is it's a bit risky, because you can go over without one, but I wouldn't fuck with America. And with Europe, it's like, I have other unfinished business in Europe. I'm not really ready to jump on a tour with Deadspace at this point, because like, we've got other tours and things like that to do with other bands that are actually like I I am in 2 bands that are based in Europe. So
Yeah.
if I went to, I'd probably actually go and do that first.
Yeah.
And we missed festival season booking for the next like year and a half anyway. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I don't know. Like it's just play it as it comes. But there'd
Yep.
definitely be a lot more music from Tom and I. And I guess Dead Space will have a follow up work. Even if I said nah, we're not going to do it. Like it'll happen anyway because it does.
It always
Yeah.
ends up happening.
Yeah. At one point there'll be like a spark, and it could be like at the most random time, and then like a month later there's an album, and it's just like fuck. Now what? So yeah.
It's like, oh shit.
Nice.
Guess we better use this.
Yeah.
And finally, where can people find you, and how can they support your music?
Hopefully not at my house.
The usual places. Spotify. Stream our stuff.
I think we're on Apple Music. We use a distro person that spreads it.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of stuff up on our Bandcamp, so merch and stuff. So
Awesome.
they can buy stuff there or not, up to them.
Perfect.
We do actually have digipack versions of the new record out.
Yep.
They look pretty fucking cool. But,
So go grab one. There's one in there.
Yeah, go grab one. Why not? But yeah, there will be vinyl versions as well. But we just I'll be really honest. I was meant to put in the order for it about 2 months ago, and then I had uni exams, so I actually haven't sent the order email yet. But it doesn't matter for us, like whether it comes out when the album comes out. They will, they're vinyls.
And like you were saying before, you got to have that balance. So your uni stuff's got to come first, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I fucking hate it. Check this out. Anyway, so they look cool.
Beautiful. Who did the artwork as well?
So my wife, Annette, did all of the artwork, including these are all like photos that she took. So all the photography, like all the faces on this are like creations of hers, and the layout's all her as well.
Incredible.
Just looks like absolutely awesome.
Awesome.
Really, like it kind of captures exactly how the album feels.
Yeah, it works really well with it.
I feel like the whole album's kind of like looking with like one eye shut and like my life and a busted face. And I mean, this guy kind of like just covers that completely, if you can see it.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm really happy with these. I think they're really cool.
Is that a signed copy, or is that printed, signed inside?
They're signed. Yeah,
nice.
They're all signed. Yeah,
nice.
So yeah, we like it's another big thing with the band. Like we don't print 500 CDs. We print like a limited amount of 80 CDs or whatever, and we sign them. And then when they're gone, they're fucking gone. That's it. So
awesome. Nice.
Yeah, that's our thing. It's a bit punk DIY kind of stuff, but like it's good quality stuff. It's not like it's made in our bathroom.
No, that's great. I think we've got to hold on to some of that DIY type stuff. I think it makes such a big difference, like you're saying, about all the changes in the media industry and the way that we consume our media. We've got to hang on to some of those things because they make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, well, it's all going down the shitter, so hang on to whatever you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
Anyway, look, thank you again for joining me. It's been really nice chatting.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Likewise.
And thanks to all those tuning in for this episode. Until next time, stay metal.